Welcome to The Explainer. I am so glad you're here today because we're tackling something that's absolutely crucial for organizational resilience. But honestly, it gets misunderstood all the time. Today we're talking about how to construct the perfect ISO IEC 42001 2023 audit report. I want you to think of this explainer kind of like a construction site. We're going to use a blueprint metaphor today because building a really high-impact audit report is exactly like constructing a structurally sound, highly functional building. You need a solid foundation, clear framing, and a flawless final inspection. Let's get into it.
But before we break ground, let me ask you this. What good is finding a critical security flaw if your audit report just buries it on page 40? Seriously, the answer is no good at all. In the high-stakes world of information security and compliance, finding the flaw is really just half the battle. If your communication isn't crystal clear, structured, and highly actionable, that flaw is just going to sit there unaddressed, leaving the organization totally vulnerable. To prevent that from happening, we are going to build this perfect report layer by layer, starting with the blueprint of compliance, building the executive summary, scope, and methodology, documenting findings, driving those corrective actions, and then finally, the final assessment.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the blueprint of compliance. This is the foundation of our reports.
Okay, let's dive into this. Think of the lead auditor as a master architect who's designing a roadmap to absolute compliance. The ISO/ISC 42001-2023 audit report, that is your key communication document. It conveys the organization's compliance levels, areas for improvement, and the required corrective actions straight to your stakeholders. It's not just some historical record of what you happen to find on a Tuesday afternoon. It's an active catalyst for continuous improvement in information security, mitigating those internal risks and strengthening your controls.
A well-architected report does a lot of heavy lifting for you. It communicates findings objectively, it actively guides those corrective actions, it securely documents your evidence of compliance, and it enhances continuous improvement. Basically, this document provides ultimate transparency. It builds trust with stakeholders and, crucially, it drives those big management decisions regarding risk and overall security posture.
Moving right along to Section 2, building the executive summary. This one is specifically designed for senior management.
With our blueprint understood, let's build the facade of our building. You know, the part everyone actually sees first. Look, senior leaders are busy. They are absolutely not going to read a 50-page technical document line by line. No way. So your executive summary has some non-negotiable elements that you just have to punch out clearly. You've got to include the purpose and scope of the audit, the key findings or compliance gaps, any critical nonconformities, and you need a definitive statement on the overall effectiveness of the Information Security Management System, the ISMS.
Because really, the executive summary must provide the complete compliance picture at a single glance. Remember our question from the beginning. If you find a critical regulatory failure or some massive vulnerability, this is the exact place it needs to be highlighted. It has to be front and center so leadership can allocate the right resources to fix it immediately.
Okay, down to the framing and foundation. Section 3, scope and methodology. This is where we define our boundaries and techniques.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how vital it is to clearly separate the what from the how. Your scope defines the exact boundaries, meaning the specific departments, physical locations, and the precise clauses of ISO/ISC 42001-2023 that are being assessed. The methodology, on the flip side, explains how that evidence was gathered. Was it through reviewing security logs, interviewing the finance team, maybe physically observing server room access? Distinguishing these two things prevents stakeholders from completely misinterpreting the audit's boundaries and, say, assuming a clean bill of health for a department that you didn't even look at.
Next up, Section 4, documenting findings and nonconformities. This is our structural inspection phase.
So here in the structural inspection phase, as an auditor, you have to link specific real-world findings directly to ISO clauses. This structured approach removes literally all ambiguity. You can see here that Clause 7.3.3 relates to an incomplete security training finding, which is backed up by the Finance Department training logs. But take a look at the next line, Clause 6.1.2. Outdated software and weak access, evidenced by a system vulnerability scan. This kind of direct linkage is just incredibly practical. So the crucial point is that the severity classification dictates the urgency of the repairs you need. A minor nonconformity? That's an isolated issue. Missing training in the finance department is definitely bad, but it's an isolated lapse. A major or critical nonconformity, though, represents a systemic failure. Outdated software, combined with weak access control that leads to unauthorized access, that is a critical failure that jeopardizes the entire system. Your report must make this distinction crystal clear for the reader.
Moving on to Section 5, driving corrective actions. Let's get into the repair phase.
Once we identify those structural flaws, we have to move into the repair phase, and we are fixing the foundation here, not just slapping on some fresh paint. The source material makes this point incredibly clear. Corrective actions must eliminate the root causes of nonconformities, rather than merely treating their symptoms. Under ISO/ISO 42001-2023, a temporary patch is just entirely unacceptable. I mean, if a pipe is bursting because the water pressure is way too high, mopping the floor is just treating the symptom, right? You have to actually lower the pressure.
Doing that requires a really logical step-by-step flow. First, root cause analysis. Why did the system fail in the first place? Second, plan corrective actions to address that specific root cause. Third, implement the solutions. And finally, verify effectiveness to ensure your fix actually holds up under pressure. Say we have an IT security breach. We analyze the gap, realize the passwords were just easily compromised, we implement a plan like multi-factor authentication, and then we verify it works.
And this brilliantly illustrates what a concrete, actionable roadmap for recovering from a major nonconformity actually looks like. You don't just write, fix the breach. Instead, you recommend updating the security software, implementing multi-factor authentication across all endpoints, conducting regular employee training on those new protocols, and establishing follow-up mechanisms to verify it's working. That is how your audit report actively drives improvement.
Finally, we arrive at Section 6, the final assessment. It's time for the final sign-off.
We've reached the final stage of our construction project. The repairs are outlined, the structure is totally sound, and your conclusion must provide a definitive, professional opinion on the organization's information security posture. It should include the overall assessment of compliance, a thorough review of how well past corrective actions have held up, a statement on the organization's readiness for future audits, and strategic recommendations for continual improvement. Essentially, this is where you hand over the keys to a secure, fully compliant system. This quote perfectly summarizes the core value of our explainer today. A structured, well-architected report is not just some bureaucratic check-the-box requirement. It is the absolute ultimate tool for organizational resilience. It's what transforms an audit from a simple fault-finding mission into a strategic asset that actually mitigates real-world risk. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final, vital question. Look at the last audit report you wrote, or maybe the last one you read. Are your audit reports just listing faults, or are they genuinely building a roadmap to continuous improvement? Use this blueprint, structure your findings, and turn your next audit report into a true masterclass in compliance. Thank you so much for hanging out and joining me today, and hey, keep building better systems.